Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. I mean, it's time. Steelers finally get their first loss of the season at home to, I don't want to say a bad Washington team, because I don't think they're that bad with Alex Smith as the quarterback. And I want to see, like, a lot of people were saying, oh, that's awful. Alex Smith is a bad quarterback. Like, no, Alex Smith was a good quarterback before he suffered a leg injury. And we've talked about it on the show. He helped build the 49ers. I think if Harbaugh would have stuck with him, they would have won the Super Bowl. He basically helped the Chiefs. They did the reverse Philadelphia, where they traded Alex Smith to get the key pieces to build around Patrick Mahomes, where I was wondering if the Eagles were going to do that. They should have did that with Carson Wentz. And now they're going to start Hurts over him anyway. So validation, we've been talking about how bad Wentz has been that entire time. They had a Super Bowl winner in Foles. They should have just went ahead, and I know this is off topic, but it just makes me mad. They built a statue of the guy, and then they let him go for basically nothing when they could have just signed him and traded Wentz away for key pieces, because people still thought Wentz was good. And then they could have just said publicly, like, look, we have to get with the guy that won us the Super Bowl for the first time in however long. Did they even win it up to that point? I don't think they did. Was that the first one? So,
yeah.
I don't know. That's my thoughts on it. Alex Smith isn't as bad as what they are or what people think, and they're in a position now to win the NFC East. It's a bad division.
Which aligns with exactly what I already told you. Riverboat Ron was going to pull them through, and they're going to win the division. I already called it.
So, but if I'm looking at the actual thing, I think they're still a little bit behind because of the head-to-head win percentage, and then I think when that comes down, it will be the division, which we were correct last week. The Steelers do hold the tiebreaker over Kansas City. And immediately, I don't think it was during the Steelers game, but there were a lot of talking heads. I think I heard on Sunday one of the NFL shows. They were complaining that a lot of owners are pushing back that there's only one team that's going to get a bye in these new playoffs, like the new playoff setup, because they're looking at the AFC and they see the Steelers and the Chiefs, two teams that have been dominant all season. I mean, the guy basically hit the nail on the head. He was thinking that the Chiefs were going to be screwed out of it because Pittsburgh might not lose, but of course Steelers lose. So I wonder if the Chiefs are the ones on the positive side if people won't care because they're defending champs, and who cares about the Steelers, what most people would think. But, I mean, the Steelers right now, I have a feeling that they're going to be the ones that are just sitting out because Ben continues to have bad interceptions. I mean, he's on the same trajectory as my man Russell Wilson. And at this point, it's like, Russ, what are you doing? Like, they single-handedly could have put the Redskins in the driver's seat in that division by just taking care of business. But how can you not throw a touchdown against the Giants? I mean, they're not a good defense. I don't understand. Although my man Jabril Peppers is playing pretty well. Get him back from injury. He took out Carson on one of the blitzes, just destroyed him. Easy sack. It's amazing what you can do with a coach that actually plays you at, I think they basically have him at a strong safety now, where last year with the Browns, they would just have him 30 yards from the ball playing free safety. And they're like, he's not really doing much back there. When they knew it, at Michigan, he played a hybrid linebacker / safety, kind of like their blitz nickel package. They made the position up for him, and then the Browns couldn't figure it out. That's why I just think the poor coaching on the Browns. That's why I'm still shocked that they're 9-3. The Browns are the reason the Steelers haven't clinched the playoff spot yet. Although everyone knows that they have.
In Cleveland's defense, they also fired the coach that gave up a Hail Mary to win last week, too.
Yeah, that's true. And he got fired, didn't he?
He just got fired too. Adam
Yeah.
Gase is hanging on by a thread.
Adam Gase has to be fired. I mean, you get fired from Miami, and now they merely turn it around, and they're like competing, and they're going through a quarterback transition anyway. And the guy that you had, Tannehill, has been playing rock solid with the Titans.
Yeah, and that amazed me too with Miami that they start off the year in pretty good shape with Fitzpatrick, and they're like, nah, it's not your team. Go sit down.
Yeah, but we've talked about that. That was because the owner was saying he wanted to see what he had in Tua.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, what was their record at the start of the season? Because it was almost like, what move were they going to make? I think they might have been 1-3 at that time, or somewhere around there. No, they went on a hot streak, didn't they?
Yeah, they were winning.
Yeah, I can't remember when they made the switch, but they started low, and I think that they thought maybe we can get the first pick again, and do we go with Trevor Lawrence? I think everyone had that, and then they started winning a few. And then they said, well, let's just see what we got because there are a couple other quarterbacks here on the board. And so they were still like, we're not that far out. We could get a top 10 pick or whatever. But at that point, now you're playing for the playoffs. You're ahead. Why not go for it? Baltimore's ahead right now over the Cowboys. That would be the other team, along with the Raiders, that are fighting for that last playoff spot. And that's why I'm surprised that actually, I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL just said, we're just going to make it 8 teams. Like as an ultimate FU to the Steelers. If they still hold that bye, like what if they just chopped off week 17 and added another team? Because I have it on here, the NFL, and I'll just change topics as we go through the rest of the NFL stuff, because I know I'm going to go back to the Steelers. Their schedule is so messed up that the Ravens are playing on Tuesday. And so then whenever you get into next week, like there's going to be no catch-up week. Like they're already out. Week 13 was the last bye week. So now there's no games you can kind of flip around. You can't look at it and say, okay, what are we going into? There are 4 weeks left, and the schedule's already messed up to the point where now the Ravens are going to come back, play Sunday, and they're hoping that there's not a delay. Des Bryant said that he was tested positive right before the game today, which would make you think that the Ravens wouldn't have been able to play at all. So I'm wondering if they're going to try to do a set and reset, and cutting off the last week of the season would just make sense for that. And I'm not saying that that's going to be what's going to happen, but don't be shocked if a bunch of states lock down, the NFL tries to push through, because that's going to be the week. I mean, it's like the first week of January. But if players are going back to their families for the holidays or whatever, and there's going to be extra travel, it just makes sense that they would start to plant that seed now, saying, oh, the owners are realizing that only having one bye isn't fair. So let's go ahead and let's just get rid of it, and then we'll reconvene next year. But I think that that's supposed to be a permanent move. So I don't know what they could do. Like, they wanted to expand the playoffs. Now, I don't know how many times, I didn't go back through the history, but how many of them have been like a tiebreaker scenario for that number 1 seed? I would imagine a good many. Because, I mean, 2 divisions doing it every year, but that's going to be the one thing. Like the Tuesday games, I'm just worried now there's no extra buys, nothing they can do to really flip things around. So I think they're stuck. And, I mean, looking back at the Steelers, at this point, I've said it all along, if they lose another one, because they play at the Bills next week, if they lose, and I know that's 2 games in a row, I would honestly consider sitting players. I mean, that would be my thing, because I would assume you're in the playoffs. The Chiefs, I don't think, are going to lose again. I could be wrong, but I think once you're out of that number 1 seed spot, just sit a couple guys. But I guess the Chiefs do have to play the Saints. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think when you're looking at Pittsburgh, I saw a lot of things today where people were trying to blame Randy Fisher, the offensive coordinator, but I don't know that it's as much him as it is on the wear and tear on Roethlisberger, having him play. We kind of talked a little bit about it last week, where Pittsburgh's playing these back-to-back games. They're not having the bye week. There's not time for him to adjust, and it's not like he's in his second year, third year where he can just continue to drive the ball down the field. I mean, you're seeing some of that drop off with the volume of deep throws that he's making, and he's starting to play more of the small ball where they're throwing the shorter passes. I'm thinking part of that might even just be that he's battling injuries that they're not bringing out to the press or not announcing it to everyone that he's banged up. But I mean, continuously playing back-to-back weeks, shortened weeks, not giving himself the time to heal. And let's be honest, they don't have anyone else, so they can't just say, we're going to try to, like, this would have been the type of week where you go, hey, they were up 2 scores at one point. Let's bring one of the backups in and try to let them just cruise this out and give Roethlisberger some rest. They couldn't do that because as soon as he goes out, the offense completely stalls out. So they're not able to do that. And I think with some of those other injuries and stuff, it's leading him to make these smaller, more controlled throws. And I think that kind of handcuffs the offense. Now you combine that with what I feel like's been a somewhat struggling running game. I mean, I know that they move the ball, but I think more of it relies on Roethlisberger's passing ability than it does having that legitimate running back to carry the load.
And I mean, I can try to go through these. My thoughts on the first one is they should have sat him. There were rumors off the bat saying Roethlisberger might not play, and it was weird the way they said it. He might be out, but it's not because of his knee. It was like, okay, his knee bothering him that bad?
It's definitely not his knee.
Yeah, it's definitely not his knee, so don't be hitting it at the game, Washington. Like, that's basically what they were saying. So then I was like, okay, well, that's weird. So does that mean he has coronavirus? I didn't know if they were disclosing that or what they're going to do. But then I was thinking like, the Redskins are bad. Like now they played them and they lost, which is a double whammy. I know they were in the first spot for the playoffs anyway, so just don't play him. Like, if he's banged up, rest him. Because at this point, like, you would have had 5 games left. You rest him 1. You have 4 other ones. You can still hold on to that. You get no prize for going undefeated. Like we talked about last week, it would be nice if they did, and maybe that's why they didn't want to sit him, because they thought, this is rare. Who knows? This could be his last year. What player would go undefeated in his very last year if he just retired? Like, that would be the ultimate way to go out. It would beat the John Elway retirement. And I mean, I don't know if he's such a competitor. He probably wouldn't have done it, but you would have to think about it. Like, look, you'd be a legend if you went undefeated and were just like, peace, I'm out. So now I'm wondering, do you just sit him? I mean, you're playing the Bills, though. So if you sit him now, you're in a weird situation because you're going to lose the number 1 seed. If you play him and lose, then, like I said, I would just, okay, like, we're not going to get it. We better rest up. Because fighting for the number 1 seed to get that bye week, it might not pan out if Ben gets even more banged up. Like, how much rest does he actually need? Would it be good for, like, a 2-week break? And you're right. The schedule is a mess. That's why I put it on here. And that's another thing that really hurt the Steelers, because I had sat off, like, a couple weeks ago. I said, they're going to lose one of these games because you can't just keep shifting your practices, delaying practice, delaying the game, changing flight plans. And now they're going to be coming back to play on Sunday. I think is it the Sunday night game, right? I want to say it's the Sunday night game. And, yeah, I believe so. I don't think, or is that the Monday night? I better check out the schedule real quick before I give my thoughts, because it is Sunday night. So on NBC, Sunday night against the Bills, it's away. They play another night game against the Bengals the very next Monday. So you get an extra day, but then you go back to a Sunday at 1 for the last 2 games. So you're basically getting a weird schedule and then getting thrown into 2 primetime games. And then it's like, all right, then we're going to get you back to your 1 o'clock game. They've barely played any 1 o'clock games on Sunday this year. So I don't even know how do you fight that back. And if you're another team in the AFC, like you have to think, okay, Steelers are undefeated now, or they were undefeated. They could come in with one of the best records, but that's not a bad matchup. They don't have a running game, like you said. If Roethlisberger's not there to create his own running game with his arm, they're done. Like if he goes out or he can't complete the deep passes, and then the defense can just creep up, it's over. Plus, the receivers are still making bonehead drops and looking like they're just making bad decisions. Like they don't have some of the guys that the Chiefs have. Like they don't have a Tyreek Hill. As much as people want Juju to be that, they don't got it.
Well, and it's funny because we've talked over the last couple of weeks about how many drops there have been for the Steelers and the wide receivers. And Tomlin came out today and addressed it and was like, if you're not going to catch the ball, we're going to replace you with someone that will. Well, who are you replacing him with? Because those guys weren't on the roster. If there was someone that could consistently catch, we would have already signed them and been throwing them passes.
I know, and it feels like to me, I don't know, can I find the drops? For whatever reason, it's very hard to find stats on drops. Maybe if I look through the fantasy football portal here, I'll be able to find it out. Because I want to say, is it James Washington? I mean, he had the big catch for the touchdown. Yeah, was it yesterday anyway? So, like, is that the guy? I mean, I don't even know who's going to be your game-breaking receiver. Everyone keeps saying, oh, it's going to be Juju, it's going to be Juju. At this point, if it was going to be him, it would have been him. Like, that's the bottom line. And it's not him. And he hasn't made that decision. He hasn't made that jump, to the next level. Because if you go through, and of course, nope, this doesn't have drops.
While you're looking that up, I also, when I saw that the game was on the line, I realized Pittsburgh was in trouble because they had FSU kicker Dustin Hopkins coming out there. We're known for nailing field goals in clutch situations, so I wasn't surprised that, of course, it was a Florida State kicker that drilled those game-winning field goals.
Well, also going back to field goals, take the points at the beginning of the game. You take the field goal, then let's say that they're still going to throw that interception anyway, or turn the ball over, whatever it was that led to the next touchdown, because Alex Smith was still like backed up, and he's still not comfortable yet. Then you're up 17 or whatever it was instead of just 2 touchdowns. Like, and then that puts it into a different state because then you're not fighting for a touchdown at the end of the game. You only need a field goal. It might change things up. I know it was only 30 seconds or whatever, but even then, it would have changed the complexion of the game. Washington might have folded. So I don't know, but that's the one thing that I did notice.
Did you notice Alex Smith's leg?
The blood?
Yes.
How would I not? Because they kept zooming in on it, and then the guy's like, "Why is it bleeding so much?" And then it's like, he definitely got cleated. I don't know. I didn't see it, but it's not anything that they could have just patched up or whatever. I mean, it was pretty bad. I honestly don't know. But they said it wasn't his injured leg anyway. But I was thinking, who in the right mind would think, oh, is that his broken leg? Like, do broken legs just start bleeding randomly? Like, is that a thing?
Well, Alex Smith said like he could feel the blood like squirting. So I don't know what the heck he did, but it was bad enough that he felt like the blood squirting out of his leg. It was like, nah, just tape it up. We'll get to it later.
I know, and it looked bad. And that's why I'm surprised. Like, I thought whenever they had the blood things that they were supposed to pull them. That might just be a high school thing or something. But, let's see. So, in 2020, Chase Claypool has 3. I guess James Washington also has 3. It says Juju has 3. Eric Ebron has 6 drops. And Deontay Johnson has 10. And if this is correct, I don't know if it is. But come on, Johnson, Well, and I thought he's more of a dynamic playmaker, but I'm surprised that Juju doesn't have more. That just might be fast season fumbles getting me. But I don't know. I don't think they're in a bad spot. I just think that you're watching a team that people are going to look back and says, okay, you know what happens? That's it. Steelers are done. People will be like, yeah, they had a good season, or weren't they supposed to be good? It's a shame that Ben Roethlisberger, that happened to him, because he's just going to be banged up and he's going to make some bad plays. And if it happens in the playoffs, that's it.
But what rock are you living under? Like, that's Roethlisberger's game. Like, he's had questionable interceptions. He's in that same Favre mold where he's going to throw that 30, 40-yard touchdown pass to win it in between 6 defenders like he did last week. Or he can throw that costly interception in the middle of the game too. I mean, I think that's why he doesn't have more Super Bowl rings, because of the interceptions. But you take that risk with the reward, knowing that he's delivered on enough occasions.
But has he? It's been over a decade.
He's got the rings.
Yeah, from over a decade ago.
And for a while, like, I will say, he had to deal with the defensive turnover too, where I truly feel like when Polamalu retired, when they finally got him out, that there was a lot of hurt on that defense that he had to compensate for poor defensive play. And now that there's a little bit more balance, and I think that the Fitzpatrick trade last year helped clear some of that up.
But
I think they're getting back to that.
But we have to realize that they're suffering some bad linebacker injuries that they're not just going to be able to plug back in.
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, here we are. What's carrying the team right now? You know, they're going to live and die the rest of this year on Ben's wounded wheels. And if he goes out, we already know how the rest of this year is going to play out. Start the year off 11-0, get to the playoffs, knocked out first round, and that'll be the end of it.
And that's why I'm saying I think what they should do is just sit them. Sit them. Let's see what happens and get back onto it, because that's going to be the way that they're going to fight forward. I mean, if they get in the playoffs and Ben's hurt and he has to go out, like you mentioned earlier, there's no way. There's no way the backup quarterback's going to go in and win. I mean, it would just come down to matchups in the playoffs, but still, you're going to be getting more and more banged up. You looked fresh at the beginning of the year, and then even through that middle stretch where he was playing lights out and they blew a few teams out. Now it's like, oh yeah, we were expecting this. The Tom Brady transition, basically, where you just start turning the ball over or whatever. But Tom Brady just had a bye. So for all we know, he can come out and be on fire the last couple games. Maybe they'd rest him too. I don't know. They have to clinch up though. Although they did get some help, because the Arizona Cardinals on that NFC, I know we talked about the East a little bit, but the Cardinals, what are you doing? Cliff Kingsbury, is Murray going to be a quarterback that just gets banged up and then that's it? Because, I mean, realistically, what else do they have? He came in, I know he threw 3 touchdowns, but like, Goff only threw 1. They just crushed it elsewhere, and they got 38 points. Like, the Cardinals almost remind me, like, he brought the Big 12 style, and you remember, he had gotten fired from Texas Tech. So the guy gets fired and then is hired in the NFL, and everyone's applauding him like it's a great move. That's the reason why he got fired in college, because couldn't close out teams. You can score points, but if your defense is giving up 30 points a game, which I don't know what their average is. I mean, their winning stretch, they were shutting teams down. Like, they weren't good teams, though. Like, they held the Jets to 10, Cowboys to 10. They won a shootout with the Seahawks where they gave up 34. They also gave up 34 in a loss to the Dolphins, 30 to the Bills in a shootout win. And now it's like, okay, If you're consistently giving up 30 points, you're not going to win that many games. So I just think that the NFC, they're really setting it up. Really setting it up for my man Tom Brady. Play that Giants in the first round. He's getting his payback. I know Eli's not there. He'll be there in spirit, though. First ballot Hall of Famer, Eli Manning. I don't know why you're shaking your head. He's a two-time champ. You were just saying Ben Roethlisberger won 2 rings. Eli won the more recent than Ben, didn't he?
I think you're right.
Yeah, he went on top, Matt. Anything else you got for the NFL?
No.
And I didn't know how long we'd end up going on it. We got some big games coming up. Steelers and Bills. Who do you got?
I want to say Pittsburgh's going to rebound, but being on the short clock, I think the nod goes to Buffalo.
I think the Bills win, and I don't think the Steelers look good doing it. Like, I think it's just going to be a continuation. And what I don't want to see is turnovers. Lose the game, but don't turn the ball over. If you're
you're going to see the turnovers.
I know, that's what I'm saying. That's the key to the game for me. I want to see no turnovers, and if you're going to save his arm by just shifting the offense to just stay close with the dink downs, then don't turn the ball over. Like, if you're going to play to keep him healthy or whatever you're going to do. But I mean, at this point, I don't understand why they just don't pound the running backs. Just pound them. You're not getting any carries. What's the difference? You're eating clock. Like, you had a big lead on the Redskins. Like, just run the clock out. And then if they get the ball back or whatever, just run the ball. And eventually, if you're not getting it, go do some zone runs. Do something. Try to get something going. I know Ben's not going to be out there running like reads or whatever. But they could give him an RPO where he's barreling down for 1 yard. At least do it eat 7 seconds off the clock. So, I don't know. That's my key. Watch that game. Hopefully none of their games get delayed. And we'll start to get ready for some of the playoff pick'ems. We got some fantasy stuff going on because looking for late season additions. Right now, for fantasy, I don't even know. I don't have any tips for anyone. Russell Wilson's so bad, I'm ready just to pull the trigger. My team played well, although the team I played had Waller from the Raiders get 45 points. What the hell? So, luckily I wasn't in the playoffs. Now we're getting ready for the playoffs. Hopefully, things smooth out and I get that last spot. And I'll be looking for things and I'll be bringing it in. So even if I'm eliminated, I know teams are going to be starting their playoffs. But a lot of things coming out with McCaffrey. He's supposed to be back. But if you're looking for pickups, keep an eye on the Carolina Panthers because supposedly down here, a lot of their players tested positive for coronavirus, including 2 or 3 of their top receivers. So if you're looking for late pickups, look for some guys that Carolina's going to play just to get some points because that's another thing. Keep an eye on injuries. That's my tip of the week. Injuries, and look for teams like Carolina where if you have your top 2 receivers out because of coronavirus, they're going to be playing a new number 1. They're most likely available unless you're in a super deep league. So if they're available in our league, they're most likely available in everyone else's league. That's usually how I play it. Because Matt Berry says, hey, pick this guy up. Never, ever been available. Because he must be playing in a 4-man league. So that's my tip. Tip of the week. Keep an eye on the Panthers. Another team that we look out for would be the Ravens because we don't really know how they're going to bounce back. But then again, you're playing with fire because if they end up getting delayed again or anything, you don't want to be waiting till Tuesday to potentially fill your lineup. So
just be like the Ravens. Just sign them and be like, we're good. We don't have to do contact tracing.
Well, that's going to be some of the stuff that is going to be really interesting because if let's say the Chiefs are playing Monday night, they have to sit Tyreek Hill, that could change a playoff game dynamically. or like Mahomes or someone like that. And I know the NFL really wouldn't care. They just want their guys to be healthy. But fantasy owners, I could see them getting really mad in playoff rounds. I think in the regular season, everyone's kind of okay with it. They're like, yeah, we knew this was going to be a crazy season when we signed up. But in the playoffs, it's going to hurt a little bit more if you wake up on Sunday and get that alert. Ding! Hey, your number one guy's out for the week, coronavirus. So, I mean, Connor was out too, right?
I think so.
So that might be another thing too, getting him back. Yeah, he was on the reserve. He's been on the reserve for a while, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he comes back, and that opens the running game up a little bit. Maybe that he is missing a dynamic piece. So shifting into college now, I really don't have anything for off sports. I did have one. They added breakdancing to the Olympics, Matt.
I saw that. I feel like they're just whoever's coming up with things. It's like, what can the United States win at?
That's not even. There's no way we would win.
Oh my God! Yes, there is.
Matt,
who would dominate? Where did breakdancing start with? America.
Did it?
I'm almost certain it did.
You don't know. You do not know.
Who would be breakdancing?
I will say this. I saw a video put together by a team in Korea, and it was mind-blowing, Matt. So I will say, I've never seen a team from America do something and be that organized. Because you know that there would be 38 donors involved, and there's no centralized breakdancing squad. I mean, crap, we couldn't even keep the gymnastics team together without internal scandals. Breakdance will be no different.
It'd be like everything else that we do. We're going to dominate.
And to be honest, it shouldn't even be a sport. Because I was looking at it, like they would never put a weird sport like that in the Winter Olympics. They have classic ones like curling and luge. Like they would never put. I mean, I know that they have like snowboarding and stuff where they have scoring judges doing scores, but I think a lot of that's pretty standard. Like you land a 1080
all the time.
What?
And who dominates that every time?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like some of these ones, like breakdancing, there's going to be no system. Like what's going to be the thing? You do like a backflip, you get a certain score. Like in snowboarding, it's kind of like you land this trick, you're most likely going to win. Like there's some like 2 or 3 tricks every year that if you can land them multiple times, you're going to win. And so you can play it safe and try to just cruise to a medal, and hopefully the other people in front of you wreck. But it's pretty much well known since like the 90s that, hey, you have to land these certain things. I think the X Games really opened it up. But like a lot of the dancing ones, you can only dance so many ways.
So you think.
So it's like they're looking for flaws. Like, I don't know. I would like to see that just separate into its own little thing. But that's just me. We'll see. Are the ratings going to tank? Are the Olympics going to bring it back up? They took a year off. That got to mess up qualifying because we talked about football being messed up. The Olympics are going to be messed up because then the next time it's only going to be a 3-year break. So there are going to be people that might have been pushing for one last run this year that might not be able to qualify now. Or if they do, they're not going to be able to perform at their top peak if they're going up there in age. So something to keep an eye on. I know it's random. I sound like an old guy complaining about dancing in the Olympics. I'll roll with it. Oh, I didn't even talk about it. The big topic for college football, Ohio State versus Michigan, canceled. First time since, what was it, 1918? And that was whenever Michigan got kicked out of the Big Ten for winning. Yep, 1918. And
the Spanish flu pandemic.
Yep. And looking at this, it's almost like ESPN tried to paint them into a corner because Kirk Herbstreit came out and said, oh, yeah, there's no way Michigan's going to play because they don't want to get embarrassed on the field. And so then Michigan almost had to like put a thing going forward like they were going to play. But everyone knew they weren't going to play. I think the last numbers I saw where they had like 45 people that were out. Like, that's half your team. Like, you're going to put together a half your team to pride it together to what? Get annihilated? Ryan Day had already said in the summer he was going to try to put 100 up on him. I mean, it's pretty realistic if you're playing 45, only 45 players, because what do they carry with them? 85? So 45 is gone, you're dressing 40. And if you're at home, which I don't think they were, because I know at home you can dress more, because like walk-ons and stuff, but normally you don't travel with them. Maybe the NCAA would have let them travel if they would have said, like, look, we have this many people out. I don't know. But you're still not going to be at full strength. And then I think that's definitely way over the limit, because I thought the Big Ten limit was like 10% or something. But 45 people would be, that's just ridiculous. So to get them all back through like additional testing or whatever and contact tracing, it might have been barely possible. I mean, Ohio State was able to do it, and they had what? Was it 23? I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
But they were fighting for the playoffs. So, like, they had to basically play, which is probably right at or below the limit to the Big Ten.
Well, they're below the limit right now. And to me, I think the easy solution is have them play Texas A&M, who's missed their game. That will never happen.
That will never happen. Why would you even bring that up? Because it's not even...
Because of the stupid rules that the stupid Big Ten put together.
No.
Why would you give yourself no wiggle room? That's so stupid.
It's not the rules that the Big Ten put together.
Yes, it is.
Matt, the Big Ten would never agree to that because college football is broken.
They agree to conference-only schedule.
Yeah, but so did the SEC. So, but the only, like, if there was a real playoff, that game would happen this year. But because it's like a 4-team invitational, there's zero chance because Ohio State's in the position of power. There's no way for the committee to look at that team and say, we're going to leave you out. Because of how the system is built. The system is built on which team looks the best on paper. They've said it 20 times. They've said it's not about your resume, it's about putting in the best team, which is a joke. I mean, BYU flew across the country to Coastal Carolina, and I was pulling for them to win that game just so they could come out and say, like, look. But if you're Coastal Carolina, I don't see how you're not mad. You're ranked 13th. You're one of only 2 teams with double-digit wins, Notre Dame being the second one. And your team, your conference beat 3 Big 12 teams, and they have Iowa State as 7th. Iowa State at 7th is a joke. If Iowa State is 4th, Alabama will crush them so bad, it'll be worse than the beatdown that they put on Michigan State. Like, that would be a non-compete. I won't even be surprised if it was 62-0. Like, Iowa State and the Big 12 are not good. Iowa State lost to a Sun Belt team themselves. There's zero reason the committee can sit down and say Coastal Carolina is a worse team than Iowa State. It's not the eye test, because Iowa State has looked like shit this year. It's not the resume, because they don't have it. There's no reason they should be above Cincinnati. No Big 12 team should be ranked above 15.
And I give credit to BYU for, on a shortened schedule, picking that spot up and just saying, yep, we'll do it. We'll go right now and get it done. Because, when we looked last week and we're talking about A&M and Florida possibly being on the outskirts, it's like, what do you do to boost your record? This is one of those times where you let them play Ohio State, because as it is, if they lose this game, they're barely going to have enough to qualify to compete for their own conference championship. What better way to prove, and not playing the bottom feeders of your conference and saying, yeah, we played a couple games, let us in. I mean, you didn't even start on time.
Well, I'm just saying the rules are that they're looking for the best team, and right now there's zero incentive for Ohio State to do it. If it was a 16-team playoff, I would guarantee that Ohio State would play just to get one more game on their resume, or maybe even an 18 playoff. But you're looking at, like, even if you had an 18 playoff this year, which is why I want them just to go to 16, an 18 playoff might cut Cincinnati out and they might throw in a 2-loss Iowa State and a 2-loss Georgia. I mean, at that point, like there's not even – you can't even tell me that the 1-loss Miami should be behind Iowa State. Like, what are you saying? The ACC has the 2 of the top teams. Miami's only loss is to Clemson. Like, Iowa State lost to a Sun Belt team. You're telling me that the best team in the Sun Belt is only ranked 13th. Then how is that a good loss? I just don't understand it. I think the team they lost to, did they lose to Louisiana? Or did they lose to somebody?
So.
But still, then have Louisiana up high because it wasn't a close game. Louisiana kicked the shit out of them. It was 31-14. Like, Iowa State is not good. And if they're losing to Louisiana by that score, Alabama will kill them so bad that it won't even be funny. Because Alabama seems like they're light years ahead. People thought that beatdown in 2012 of Notre Dame, and I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama did the same thing this year. Because the worst thing that could happen is, let's say Clemson beats Notre Dame. And then the committee decides to have Notre Dame and Clemson rematch in the playoffs. Because for the ACC, then you're just setting up a what scenario where what if Notre Dame does win the third game? And then they just get killed by Alabama in the national championship.
Well, if they keep it close, if that game's close, then you just put them at 1-4, like Alabama or 1-3, and you do what Alabama and Georgia, put them at opposite ends, and you go with it.
Well, that's what I'm wondering what they're going to do, because fortunately, and like I said for Ohio State, yeah, they lost a couple games due to coronavirus. Their team should be healthy now going into the last week. But the smart thing the Big Ten did, even if Ohio State doesn't make the Big Ten championship game, they get to play a crossover game against the second best team in the West in them. So the way it will slate out right now is that Indiana would be the Big Ten East number 1, and they would play Northwestern. Ohio State's going to get another ranked matchup against Iowa.
But here's the crazy thing. Because I think Indiana's just getting hit with some COVID issues. How crazy would it be that if they end up not being, if Ohio State doesn't qualify, Indiana has to opt out, that in a weird backdoor way, that it drops the whole way down to Penn State being the representative of the East side in the Big Ten championship.
Well, I said that last week. I said, what would happen if that was the scenario? I don't know what the winning percentage was. I mean, you'd basically be looking at the Michigan State game against Penn State deciding the champion.
It's 2-4 and 2-5 is where Michigan State and Penn State are right now.
And they would be playing for that game because Maryland would be underneath the limit right now. So it would basically go to the winner of that game. And then what? But like, I don't think it's going to happen, because I think if that scenario happens, I think that they'll vote and have a rule where if the remaining team is under 500, which is what the rumor's supposed to be, that if that happens, if Indiana can't play, they're going to just let Ohio State play because they have more wins than the other teams have. Like, it's not a scenario where I think they were looking to try to keep like it consistent, where it wasn't like a 3-1 Northwestern getting in over a 5-2 Iowa. But I mean, that's just not the way it played out. If Indiana would beat Ohio State and then Ohio State didn't have enough games and they were the backup plan, I could see that happening, but there's no way that they let a bad Penn State or Michigan State team into the Big Ten champion. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, Ohio State is most likely either going to be in that game or that, like I said, they're going to be playing Iowa and it's going to be the top build game. People are not going to care about Indiana and Northwestern, because that's my other thing too. They really are only just keeping the Big 12 strung along, because there's no reason Indiana shouldn't be above Iowa State either. Their only loss was by 1 score to Ohio State, and I think it was on the road. like there's no other team. Like even if you're looking at, yeah, it was on the road. I know they didn't play as many games, but they also didn't lose to a Sun Belt team. So like you can go back to that, and like even Georgia, but that also goes back. I know Miami lost by a lot more scores, but even Oklahoma, like you're losing to bad teams. Yeah, I get that you're going to play in and they want you there just in case they want another name brand and they want to keep the Big 12 in like one of these high bowl games. But to your point, if I was A&M, since they're already on the outside looking in, and I know BYU has a game scheduled, but if I were them, I would be calling around to other conferences and asking the SEC for a waiver to play another top team. Because at this point, why not? Because that's the only way that you're going to be able to get two teams in. Because Alabama's going to have to play Florida. I would assume the winner of that game is in. If Florida wins, do they try to sneak Alabama in too? That's where it gets tricky because, like I said, if Clemson wins, who are you leaving out? Are you going to leave out Ohio State because they didn't play as many games? Or are you going to leave out... That may be the
route they go.
But I don't think they really want the rematches either. Because they've learned their lesson from the last time. If you start to throw in rematches, people don't watch. People didn't even want to watch Clemson, Alabama for the fourth time. Like those ratings started to drop. And so they try to like get them out of the way early. So I don't know what they're going to do. Like they have to just be thinking, what can we do to get Notre Dame in? I would almost wonder if they just put Notre Dame against Ohio State no matter what. Because I don't think at this point that they can keep Notre Dame out. They're too big of a name. And Ohio State versus Notre Dame would be a great game. And I don't think that they would have a chance of a blowout. Plus, you have Clemson, Alabama. But again, if Clemson wins, how do you drop them to the fourth spot to play Alabama first? Like there's the way they have the ranking set up right now, there's no good way. There's no good reasoning to be like, unless you jump. Like it just doesn't make sense. You would have to drop Clemson unless they're setting up another Clemson-Ohio State matchup. But those matchups haven't even been good. Clemson's been blowing them out every time. And same with Notre Dame, Alabama. You would have to assume that Clemson blows out Ohio State, Alabama blows out Notre Dame, and you're looking back to the same exact thing. So, I don't know.
Yep.
That's my thing. Do you have anything else for just teams and things before we get into the coaching stuff?
No.
All right, the coaching interview stuff. I have on here coaching interview protocol because in the middle of the coronavirus, teams like South Carolina are getting things done. They're firing their coach. They're interviewing other coaches. I think it was it Satterfield? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
He was the old coach from App State, right?
Yep.
He ended up at Louisville. And so then he took an interview with them. And then he obviously didn't get it. They hired Shane Beamer, trying to bring Beamer ball to South Carolina. And I think Beamer was the favorite the entire time.
Well, he was an assistant there for a while. So
I had heard that they made the move because they thought that they could hire him. Like it was almost like a reverse Texas, which we'll get into in a little bit. But just the fact that you took a job at a bigger school, why are you apologizing? And a lot of these schools, they're like trying to put their coaches in bad positions. But South Carolina should have helped him out, I think.
But to give you the context of it, it was before he went on the interview, he got up on the podium and said about how with the South Carolina and the Vanderbilt openings that he was being rumored to go to them for more money. He got up at the podium and was like, yeah, I'm committed to coaching at Louisville and building this into a championship caliber program. And then it comes out that he interviewed for those other jobs. It's like, well, you can't say you're committed to building it while interviewing for other jobs.
But what's he supposed to say? Like, no, I don't care about this job at all.
You look what Jimbo Fisher did. He just said, I'm worried about my next opponent. And like he never got up and tried to grandstand saying he was going to stay at Florida State forever.
Matt, he had his Christmas tree in his yard at the beginning of December. You don't think I remember that?
But he was rumored to be going to LSU for a while. Like every year, he was being rumored to go somewhere else, and you were having to deal with these with the rumors of him going. He was never saying, "Hey, I'm here for life," and then secretly leaving out the door to go to A&M.
Well, that's the world that Jim Harbaugh's in right now. He's in a secret paradox, Matt, where he is the best coach of all time, and every NFL team wants to interview him. But secretly, he's also the worst coach, and all of Michigan fans want him fired. So it's like, hey, NFL teams are talking to him, and then the fans are like, why? What do you see that we don't see?
But that's almost like, he gets up on the podium and says, I'm here to finish this out, and this season's not going the way we planned, but we know what we need to do to right the ship, and we're going to stay here. And then the next day, Jim Harbaugh, new coach of the Detroit Lions.
Well, I mean, we can talk about the rumors on this. So the Michigan athletic director came out and put a statement out that they haven't talked about the contract, and they're not going to talk about it until the end of the year, and he doesn't know where the leaks are coming from. But that's pretty much a lie, because they had talked about it, and Harbaugh openly said early in the year, really strategically after the Minnesota win, that they were really close to getting a contract done, but because of the coronavirus, it just couldn't come to an agreement. Then guess what? He gets his ass kicked a bunch of times, and then Ward's probably like, nah, we're not going to give you your demands now. You might have been able to snaggle these out of us week one when you won like 42 to whatever that was. It was a big beatdown over Minnesota when everyone thought Minnesota was going to be a ranked team. Turns out both teams are bad. And so now it's like Harbaugh has no leverage. One of the NFL guys said that there were 5 teams that were trying to get in contact with Harbaugh, but they didn't even think that he was going to get a real offer. So I don't know if he even has any leverage, because I know NFL teams, they look at his stuff with the 49ers, but if you look at his drop-off with the Michigan team, there's a clear line where he completely changed as a coach, and it's either a sign of the game's passed him by, something's going on, and is an NFL team going to take that gamble? I mean, because you're going to be looking at teams like you said, the Lions. Is it worth it? And then going back to the Urban Meyer thing, Texas boosters, and another even weirder scenario than the Michigan one, because the Michigan one's only come about because Harbaugh's contract ends next year. I think they said 6 assistant contracts are up this year too. So they could basically tell him to hire new assistants. I think the rumor was they're going to give him 3 years, lower salary, guaranteed, but more incentives. Like, hey, if you beat Ohio State, then you can get back up to where you were. If you make the Big Ten championship game, win the Big Ten, like stuff like that. And we're going to cut your salary, and you're going to have to use that, because we're not going to take our allocation away. We're actually just going to give you more money for assistants, which is kind of what Michigan State did when they hired Mel Tucker, because he was they put so much money into him because it was late in the cycle, that then they were like, we're just going to give you more assistant money. So I think that Michigan's looking to do the same thing. But is Harbaugh going to say yes or no? I mean, if they would have played Ohio State, they would have gotten killed. So it would have been a really bad look if Harbaugh would have signed an extension and then they get killed by Ohio State, and then no one renews their season tickets, because why would you? But the big thing, and this also comes down to Texas too, I know I keep mentioning it and going back to the Michigan one, but there is a early signing day period now for people that haven't been keeping up with college football. That's coming up soon. Texas went behind Tom Herman's back, and their boosters were seeing if Urban Meyer wanted to coach there. Tom Herman and Urban Meyer are friends. Tom Herman was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State when they won the national championship. So it's just a weird scenario that, of course, Urban Meyer is going to say no. Like, you're disrespecting a friend of his to see if you're going to be interested. I think if Texas would have waited, Urban might have considered it. And maybe they did pitch him the offer and he just didn't like it. Because you know how everyone always says about Texas has too many hands in the pot. So maybe that was the thing. They did push out Mac Brown, and he's been doing pretty well at UNC, at least in terms of raising their recruiting profile.
Absolutely.
But that's another big thing. Like Urban Meyer, he said that he's going to stay retired due to health issues. But that's the rumor that leaked out. Like I don't think he ever made a statement. That was just how Texas said it. So were they just saving face? I don't know. The other big one that come out, Matt Campbell was supposed to be considered next up. And he came out and said that the only job he would be interested in is Notre Dame and or Ohio State because he's from Ohio. But neither of them are going to be open. And then was it Dennis Dodd, one of the Big 12 writers? He said that Matt Campbell wouldn't take the Michigan job. But it's almost like I don't even know if Michigan would offer him, number one, because he hasn't won anything. I mean, do you hire a coach that just lost to a Sun Belt team? Like if Texas is looking at it right now.
But he has Iowa State ranked in the top 10. So take that loss as you will. He has Iowa State in the top 10 that would be an upgrade over where Michigan is right now.
But if they were any higher, like if there was a normal season, they would not be in the top 10 now. And you know it. Coastal Carolina with 10 wins or whatever, they would be above them. Northwestern would be up there ahead of them. And just in terms of like their ranking, I don't know how long he's been there.
A while.
But, I mean...
Because he was in the MAC for a while.
Yeah, how many top 10 finishes does he have? I mean, Harbaugh's been finishing up there for Michigan. He's really only had 2 down years. So, like, his best finish up until this year was 3rd in the conference. He's basically like Jim Harbaugh. You take this weird year out, he's just the worst version. So if you're Texas looking at it, it's almost like, okay, what would be the upgrade? You're going to give him some better recruits, but is talent an advantage? Because he clearly had more talent than Louisiana. Texas isn't going to put up if you're losing by double digits to a lesser team. They're just not going to do it. So you'd be better off taking the guy from Coastal Carolina.
But I think if you're Matt Campbell, take any one of those blue blood programs, and they're throwing you a ridiculous contract. Do you turn it down?
Oh, he's 100% taking it. Like, whenever Dennis Dodd, because I'm pretty sure he's a Big 12 writer, if he's the only one saying that he's turning down these jobs, it's because they haven't been offered to him. And I mean, that's pretty clear. Michigan hasn't even decided if they're going to hire or fire Harbaugh. They're not going to be talking behind Jim Harbaugh's back with Matt Campbell. Urban Meyer, maybe. I mean, Texas is doing it. But, like, they're not going to be talking behind the back for a guy like Matt Campbell. That's just not going to happen. Because even Ohio State didn't want him. I mean, Ohio State definitely had a job thing, and they just took Ryan Day. He wasn't even considered a candidate, being an Ohio guy. So, I just think, because, like, if Notre Dame opened up, their number one guy would have to be Urban Meyer. I mean, that would be my number one guy. Because that was one of the jobs, same with Michigan, where Urban said that there were only 3 jobs that his wife couldn't veto. Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame. And those were a clause in his contract for taking those. Texas wasn't one of them. Maybe his wife didn't want to move there. She had the veto power, Matt.
There you go. Maybe there's something to that.
I mean, if you're looking at it, Coastal Carolina's coach had his own issues at their old school. Apparently there was like a bunch of, it's on his Wikipedia. I don't know if you saw this. But he had a bunch of like recruiting issues. They said it was school-wide though. So they don't know if it was actually him. I don't know if he had a show clause penalty, but that's another thing too. With some of these like smaller coaches trying to move up, you have to see if you're going to be able to get that or not. But it's going to be crazy because with the early signing day, what do you do? Like if you're Texas or Michigan, you can't wait. Like Michigan just canceled their game against Ohio State. Like what are you waiting for? You got to give Harbaugh a deadline. You got to say, look, like, we need you in or you're out, and we don't care. Because if you wait till after the signing day, players aren't going to sign on the early signing day, and you're never going to get them back on the second signing day.
But I don't know if that hurts you as much as you think now, because you also have, for as many players opted out this year that hit the transfer portal this year, there's still a lot of room that you can potentially fill that roster with other guys too, if need be.
But Matt, Harbaugh already pushed a bunch of guys out. That's been the problem the entire time. So, like, even if he stays there, there's a bunch of players from, like, that 2017, 2018 recruiting class that should be juniors and seniors right now that he's processed that are starting elsewhere. The defensive guy starting at Tennessee, starting at Rutgers, like, starting at Minnesota. Like, you have guys that you could be on your team providing the depth that you need. Because that's the one thing that the Harbaugh is, like, always pointing out, like, oh, it's not like a woe is me. It's almost like, but remember, we have cornerbacks and stuff that are out because they went to the NFL. It's like, you push their backups to transfer. Like, you have built a program where people are getting drafted early in the NFL, like Donovan Peoples-Jones, and scoring big-time touchdowns. Like, they're great athletes. They're NFL-type players. But then you can't push behind and then just constantly build freshmen and sophomores. Because I think if Harbaugh leaves, a coach is able to come in and keep this recruiting class and the freshmen and sophomores that they have and coach them up, they could be legit title contenders in 2 years. Will I think Harbaugh is going to be able to do that? No. Because for whatever reason, he's, like, convinced that he should just push everybody out. If they're not showing him that they're going to be an NFL prospect, he's, like, letting them transfer. And I think that's where the issue is, and he's not going to be able to fix it. It'd almost be better for him to just go somewhere else and start over. Because that system's in place, and even if you just change a bunch of coordinators, I don't think it fixes it. You're basically relying on his name, but because he hasn't beat Ohio State, his name is almost like a joke to recruits. Because, like, all Ohio State has to say is, like, look, that guy has never beat us. We don't care what he did in the NFL years ago. That's 6 years ago now. It's almost a decade ago. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Penn State, too?
I don't even know what to make of them. They're just they have had so many people opt out and get injured and do all this other stuff that it just seems like I don't know what they do. I mean, I almost look in some ways at Penn State a similar way that I look at Michigan right now. That even if they get rid of their coach, I know you've really banged the drum hard on Urban Meyer, but who's the coach that you bring in other than Urban Meyer? Because that's like the fantasy pipe dream for a lot of people. It's tough to look at some of these guys that are running a spread type offense. One of the coaches that I think would be a very good fit for a lot of programs is Jeff Monken from Army. But I know at the thought of bringing the option to a lot of programs, like, just sends people into rage. But you look at what I think roster wise, Penn State and Michigan have similar style roster composites that I don't know that they adjust fully to a spread as easily because they have more tight end packages and run game focused offenses.
Well, I would almost just say, like, Franklin has proven that Penn State can recruit. If they can recruit outside of the state a little bit better, then they're going to be in a position to compete with anyone. And, like, if I were them, like, why not go after someone like PJ Fleck that has shown that he can recruit at Minnesota and just focus on hiring, like, good assistant coaches and letting them do their thing. Like, Harbaugh tried that with Don Brown and letting him do the defense, and it worked for a bit, but then he's never made any adjustments. So, like, he's had 1 or 2 good years, and then it's been all downhill once a coach has figured him out. If Harbaugh would have let that happen to the offense whenever he had Fish the first year, because if Harbaugh would bring him back and say, like, look, I'm going to be hands off, but you almost have to think Harbaugh's not going to be hands off. I think James Franklin is the kind of guy that could be hands off and probably is. He just has to find the right coordinators. And he's also a name that's coming up for the Texas job. So if he is looking for a change of scenery, maybe Texas just poaches him away and Penn State just fills with another big recruiter guy because that seems like that could work for them. You get a guy that can recruit, and then you go for the young up-and-coming coordinators and you let them do their thing. It's kind of what Bob Stoops did, and he was successful for a long time.
Would it be outside the realm for Franklin to go back to Vanderbilt? Would that be a step back?
Oh, that's definitely a step down. There's no way he would ever do that. If you're getting mentioned as a candidate for USC and Texas, you're not going to go to Vanderbilt. Another name, Bob Stoops has said that he's ready to get back into coaching. So if you're Michigan and you're basically giving Harbaugh a contract to go ahead and do the head coach while you let the assistants do their thing, why not just get Bob Stoops? Look at the program he built at Oklahoma, and he was able to identify young talent and let the coach in waiting that actually worked. He's a Midwest guy. He would probably love the chance because, like, it's almost like the same thing I said for Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, if he wants to come back into coaching, it's going to be for his legacy. If Bob Stoops is going to come back in, it's a legacy type thing. People are kind of like, oh, yeah, maybe it's just a program at Oklahoma. I mean, it's been a couple of years. They're starting to show drop-off from his system, which usually happens whenever a legend leaves. That's what I'm wondering if that's going to happen at Ohio State in a couple of years. Why not bring Bob Stoops or someone in? If you're giving Harbaugh the same deal and Harbaugh says, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to the NFL. Why not just get a guy that can build a program identity? I said Peterson was the other one. Also available from Washington. He said that he didn't like some of the burnout type stuff. Like, you can insulate a coach from that if you're at a bigger program. I know they're still going to handle the media and get a lot of that attention. But if you say, like, look, we have enough money where we can give you all the assistance you need. What do you want to build the program? Go for it. And if I were Penn State, I'd call him too. I mean, he had Washington in the playoffs. Penn State hasn't been able to make the playoffs either as Michigan. They've both been close. I think Penn State should have made it the 1 year. But they didn't push hard enough. And honestly, that's why I think Franklin could be on the way out. Penn State always complains about the 1994 national championship. Why doesn't their media and their coaches and their administration push for it harder? Like, they should have been in the playoffs 2016. Instead, they just seemed like they didn't care. So that's my final thing. If Penn State doesn't want to lose coaches to bigger programs, start acting like a bigger program. There's no way Ohio State, Gene Smith, who's their AD? He would have been going crazy if Ohio State would have been left out of playoffs, or if they're left out this year, there's going to be hell to pay. Penn State just kind of were like, yeah, okay. We'll let the NCAA do whatever they want to us. So that's my final bell. And that's where I think you're going to see, like, the difference. You're asking, like, what could Penn State change? It's like, act like a big boy program. Like, you put together your big games against Ohio State, and then you just, like, clap yourself on the back and say you're unrivaled. It's like James Franklin, if he's looking around, it's because he's not getting the support. Because, like, he's been above and beyond expectations. I know this year's a bad year, but everyone does realize, like you said, players are out. There's a bunch of injuries, and it's coronavirus. Your recruiting class is down this year. I was trying to bring it up to see if they re-rated the recruits. So normally there's some movement to see if, like, Penn State's guys are actively being recruited by other guys, but they're still at 20th overall. So I think that's the big red flag for Penn State, whereas Harbaugh has Michigan's incoming recruiting class at 9th. They arguably have a better recruiting class than Notre Dame. Notre Dame's at 8, but Notre Dame doesn't have any 5 stars. They just have more recruits coming in. So you could say that Harbaugh is in a better spot than Notre Dame right now, and Notre Dame's undefeated in recruiting. So if you're looking at both coaches like that in terms of turning it around, I would say right now Harbaugh has a better chance, just in terms of recruiting. Is he going to let it go? They both need to do the assistant type thing. I know they both lost assistant coaches. They haven't really been the same since. What's going to change? That's mine. What do you got for the final bell?
Don't really have too much for the final bell. Just check out southboundsports.com. Holidays are coming up. Check out our store. Get something for a loved one.
Oh, I also have a newsletter sign up. So if you don't use a podcast app, if you go to the website, I think it's on the right side. If you subscribe on the form with your email, you'll get an email every Wednesday whenever the show's posted with a link to it, so you can just listen to it right from your email. I think it will go right to the story on the website. You can just listen to it. So nothing else you have to do. Come right to you. So sign up for that if you want. I'm still working on adding some additional things to the weekly email, but that's live. So like Matt said, go to southboundsports.com. If there's anything you want us to hit on, let us know. It's going to be a crazy year still to close out the NFL season and college football. I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll be talking about it next Tuesday. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.